Hey guys, in today's video I want to go over an absolutely wild game of Scrabble I played at last weekend's multi-day tournament held in my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. Now, this game was round 7 of the 15-game main event, and my opponent was a player I know very well, longtime expert Eric Harshbarger from Alabama. Eric and I have played 20 rated games of Scrabble, and we've had some wild games, but I think this one takes the cake, and you guys will soon see why. It opened fairly uneventfully for me. I had a crummy rack with 6 vowels, and there was a pretty clear decision to exchange. I traded 4 keeping AER. Normally I might trade 5 keeping ER, but I decided to keep an extra vowel here just because with so many vowels already on my rack, that dilutes the bag and makes it slightly less likely I'm going to redraw more vowels. So I traded 4 and Eric responded with drawn for 22 points, taking an early lead. I drew okay. I do pull a couple constants, but the F and the J are fairly clunky. I shed the J by playing a jur for 28, which looks like my best play. Eric responds with Tiz for 43 points, further adding to his lead. And I face another vowel-heavy rack here, AEEFILO, and I pretty quickly narrowed my decision here down to 2 options. They're the same word and the same score. I can play Folia either here, making it an A for 26 points, or here, making Ta also for 26 points. The thing about Eric's last play of Tiz is that it opens a big scoring spot, especially if he has an X, making XI down the B column. And playing it at B2 over here fully addresses that. However, it creates a lot of other counterplay, namely plays in the top left corner on the A1 triple word score, or possible bingos hooking R to make Rye down the A column. And the other thing is Eric took a long time to play Tiz. In fact, he put it on the board, took it back, and then finally, after hemming and hawing for a bit, decided to play it. And that made me think he very likely did not have the X. Because to me, if he had the X, he would have been very eager to play this and set up a giant 50-plus point play on his next turn. So I actually decided to play Folia here, thinking, I don't think Eric had the X. I have 5 shots to draw it, and if I draw it, now I'm going to be able to play EX for over 50 points on that column, and now I don't have to worry about giving counterplay on the A column like the other placement of Folia does. So an interesting decision here, but I think I got it right. Eric, in fact, did not have the X, but unfortunately for me, he did have many bingos. He finds easily his best one, ruinates for an 82-point double-double, building his lead now to almost 100. And my plan worked. I drew the X. I ended up playing X for 53 as planned. However, this decision was actually not trivial. I could play Hex in the same spot for 4 more, but I liked keeping my H, so that way, if I weren't going to bingo, I'd at least be able to score pretty well. Whereas if I play the H, then keeping AEEL, I'm pretty vulnerable to a weak rack with vowels and 1-pointers that doesn't leave me any scoring options. I also considered Exhale under Ruinates, completely ignoring the spot on the left, scoring 48 points. This play is much more volatile as it sets up a huge D or S hook for Exhaled or Exhales on the right-hand triple word scores. However, I felt this wasn't worth the risk, because with Eric having just bingoed and drawing 7 tiles and 3 Ds and 3 Ss still unseen, the odds were pretty good he had a hook and was going to score very well in that spot. So since it was still early, I decided to be a little more conservative and play X for 53. However, Eric struck back immediately, slapping down Specimen to the N of drawn for 101 points, increasing his lead now to 141, 248 to 107. And to make matters worse, I draw BN, not a terrible draw, but it doesn't yield a bingo back, so I am in huge trouble. And it's worth mentioning, guys, I was pretty frustrated at this point, I will admit that. I'd been having a bit of a rough afternoon at this tournament, and this was actually the 4th consecutive game during which I was down over 100 points by the 5th turn, which is pretty wild if you think about it. My opponents just kept bingoing, and I ended up in these huge deficits. And I wasn't too eager to have to try to claw my way back from down 140 points against a player as strong as Eric. And my comeback began, or my attempted comeback, I should say, began with a 28-point play of He. There isn't really anything much better here. I could score more with something like Ba, but I want to try to keep the best bingo leave I can. The B actually goes really well with ALE for able words. I like playing fewer tiles here just to slow down the game and reduce the chances of drawing a V or something that's going to kill my bingo chances. I think this is a decent play. Eric scores well again, this time of vows for 45 points, and Eric is now up by 158 points. But fortunately for me, I do draw the blank, and almost instantly, after turning over my tiles, slap down my best play of Anableps to the S of a vows for 92 points. It's worth mentioning this is a sticky S word, which means it's only good with the S on the end. Anablep is not a word. An anableps, if you're wondering, is a kind of fish. And this was 92 points, which was great, but I was still going to be down well over 60 before Eric's next play. And something pretty funny happened here, guys. This is sort of the first bizarre thing that happened during this game. Instead of drawing 4 tiles to replenish the 4 he played with the vows, Eric drew 7 tiles out of the bag, resulting in 10 tiles instead of the usual 7 ending up in his possession. So this is a 3-tile overdraw. Now, overdraws happen fairly commonly in Tournament Scrabble, but 99% of overdraws you see are by a single tile, usually just out of sloppiness or carelessness. But Eric here is overdrawn by 3 tiles, so as such, I got to turn over 5 of Eric's tiles randomly and then choose 3 of those to put back in the bag and 2 of them to give back to Eric. And the 5 tiles I turned over were all kind of mediocre, D-N-O-R-T. And that made my decision kind of difficult because there's not really a combination of those 5 tiles that's particularly good or bad. I ended up giving Eric the D and the T just because those 2 tiles have kind of awkward synergy together. In any case, Eric responded with Dow to the W of a vows for 22 points, and he is still up almost 90. I had a bit of a clunky draw here, but I find a nice scoring play of Hooky for 46, which looks easily best. Eric responded with Fid for 30 points, and this here, guys, is the moment of truth. I draw a rack of A, B, M, R, T, T, U, and within under 5 seconds, I lay down a word that I kind of think is not valid, but I'm not 100% sure. I would say I was probably about 70 to 80% sure this was not a word. I played tambourist as a 9 through the is on the board, scoring 76 points. It turns out that this is indeed a phony, however, it's a fairly good phony. Tambura, T-A-M-B-U-R-A, is a kind of musical instrument, so a tambourist, if it were a real thing, could easily be defined as somebody who plays the tambura. If you think about it, harpist, violinist, oboist, clarinetist, these are all words. And I think what I got this confused with was the valid 9 of bandurist, B-A-N-D-U-R-I-S-T, because bandura is a musical instrument, and the ending of that word is fairly similar to tambourist. So I think that's how this got in my head. In any case, somehow, even though it's not a valid word, I saw this instantly and thought maybe there's an outside chance, but more importantly, there's a pretty decent chance Eric is not going to challenge, since as good as Eric is, most players who aren't at the very elite level haven't studied 9-letter words, and he probably wouldn't know for certain whether this was valid. It also puts him in a tricky spot, because by scoring 76 points, I tie the game, and from Eric's perspective, if he lets this go and scores well, he's still in very good shape. Whereas if he challenges and it is a word and he loses his turn, all of a sudden he's lost his entire advantage. So Eric, after holding for several minutes, completely understandably, did, thankfully for me, decide to let this stay on the board, and I now took my first lead of the game at 349 to 345. Eric had a nice response of Trio, hooking a Juror and Ode for 27, jumping back into the lead. And I drew the Q, which at first I wasn't too thrilled about, but then I noticed that I was close to some pretty high scoring plays through the U in my phony of tambourist, if only I could get a 6-letter word to that triple word score, starting with QU. That's not possible with this rack, but I decided to hold my Q, somewhat unconventionally, playing Gory for 29, hoping that I would draw such a play on my next turn. There's really only one viable way to get rid of my Q right now, and it's Chi in the same spot for 26, which wasn't appealing. The G and the Y don't go too well together, and if Eric has one of the 2 remaining I's, he's going to score a lot down the M column, making QI and some overlaps. So I think Gory was a good decision. Eric responded with Virtue through the disconnected V and a T, a very nice play to get rid of clunky tiles like IRU for 24 points, and my plan worked. I hit Queens for 54, which I played almost immediately. I wasn't thrilled about giving Eric the C and the E to bingo through, considering how strong the remaining tiles were for bingoing, but I don't have a choice. I'm down, I have a 54-point play, I can't afford to not take it. So just like that, I now jump into the lead by 36 points, and luckily for me, Eric does not have a bingo. He had a pretty clunky rack here with a lot of consonants, and he was forced to play Egg for 19, hooking the E to make Virtue. And amazingly, I drew well. I drew ADEENSV, and I have a playable bingo of Venduses for 70 points. Now, I played this almost instantly. In retrospect, I probably should have at least taken a second to calculate whether I would still hold on to win if Eric bingoed out. It turns out I do, because all of the remaining tiles are 1-pointers, and as we'll see, Eric's out bingos can't score quite enough. Now that being said, even if I risked losing to an out bingo, I probably still have to play this word and just take the chance that he can't bingo out. But just a good reminder here, guys, even if you're very excited and you see what you think is a exciting bingo or a good play, just take a deep breath, look and make sure it's really what you want to do. Again, in this case, it's correct, but just a good reminder that I probably rushed a little bit there. Eric did indeed bingo out. He had AILLNO blank. He has 2 playable bingos, both of which are from the S in specimen, stallion or scallion. Eric made a conscious choice here to play stallion because there was a prize at this tournament for the highest scoring horse-related word. After all, we are playing this tournament in Lexington, Kentucky, which is the horse capital of the world. So Eric deciding here to play stallion instead of scallion, and he did indeed win a prize for this word, so that is pretty cool that this blank designation at least did matter for something. But how about the outcome of the game? Eric scores 74, bringing him to 489. He catches me with an unplayed A, E, O, and T. That adds up to 4. You double that, you get 8. So Eric gets 8 bonus points, and he loses 497 to 502. Eric also won a $30 prize, I might add, for the high loss of the tournament, unsurprisingly, as normally when you score close to 500 points, you're the winner in a game of Scrabble. But yeah, a truly amazing game, and there was actually one other piece of drama, guys, that happened here at the end. We did not score this as 502 to 497. We scored it as 502 to 495. Because the O went missing temporarily at the end of the game. I only drew 3 tiles out of the bag, the A, the E, and the T, and Eric and I, in our franticness and excitement at this absolutely wild game and wild finish, forgot to check our tracking and realize that there was still an O unseen to be drawn. It turns out that the O had kind of gotten wedged at the bottom of the bag, and I failed to notice it was in there when I was redrawing the last tiles after playing Ventuses. Now, the good news is that my sloppiness didn't affect the outcome of the game other than 2 spread points. Like we see here, this game should have been recorded as a 5-point loss for Eric. Instead, it was recorded as a 7-point loss. I would have felt absolutely awful if that remaining tile were worth 4 points or more, because then a game could have been recorded as a loss for Eric that really should have been a win for him. And then I would have, albeit unintentionally, completely stolen a game from him, and I would have felt absolutely awful about that. But thankfully, it didn't come to that. And I ended up winning this game 502 to 495 insofar as it was recorded. And interestingly, one of the reasons why I might have neglected to draw the O out of the bag is we were actually using these really cool metal tiles that Eric himself built in his workshop back home in Alabama. I have a picture here of the board that we actually played on with the metal tiles. You can see, guys, at the top of the picture, the T, the A, and the E that Eric caught me with after bingoing out. The O is missing, and we only discovered the O is missing after we squared up and realized there were 99 tiles after our game. So really, really cool tiles here. I always love playing with these. I've played Eric now in 2 or 3 tournament games with these tiles. They're shockingly heavy, but they're also really nice. I know he worked super hard on those, so shout out to Eric for these awesome metal tiles. Shout out to him as well for being a great sport about this game and always giving me a lot of entertainment and some exciting games over the board. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon for the next one. Bye-bye.